This time on Must Build Something, we are going to be doing something I enjoy a lot. We are building two-way speakers with ceramic drivers and a passive radiator, and the cabinets are going to be made of MDF and glass fiber. Let's get to it. Let's get rolling.
Sometime later that day. Here I'm just making speaker rings for the enclosure. I make them inside of each other so you use less MDF.
Oh, so clumsy, and right next to the subscribe sign.
To make space for the connections, I drill a little hole and then I file it down. This way I think it's the easiest to get the spacing for the connections. This is a jig for making the top and bottom of the enclosure. So here we are screwing the cabinet together temporarily so we can do this glue up. I've put masking tape on the pieces I don't want to get glued together. I thought all the wood cutting was a little boring, so I cut the back side and the sides off camera. They are cut on a circular saw set to 45 degrees. And I made a groove and a roundover on the sides with a router. I'll make some build plans if I can find a way to put them in the comments below. The little recess I'm making all around the cabinet, it's to make a clean transition from the fabric to the MDF, so I can staple all the way around in this little recess. This is going to be a jig for holding the speaker rings until I have a couple of layers of resin on the fabric. It does not need to be as comprehensive as this, it could just be a couple of pieces of MDF. It's what we like to call a case of over-engineering gone wrong.
When you make a speaker ring, you have to have all these different cuts in it. The first one here, it's to make the speaker flush with the speaker box. And this recess I made over here, it's to mount the fabric, the fleece, that's going to be shaping the surface of the speaker. And we have this is so I can bond the glass fiber to the fleece of fabric. And this in here is so the speaker can breathe, the air can escape easier from the back side of the cone.
Here I'm starting with the polyester resin. I put 3% hardener in it and mixed it very thorough, like maybe 4 minutes or something like that. I'm putting 2 coats on. I'm letting it dry a little in between, maybe 20 minutes or so. So now I can take out the jig for holding the speaker rings and throw it out after all that work. Then it was time for a test fitting, and all fitted well, so thank God. Now though the Passive Radiator looks the same size as the driver, it's actually the double displacement of the driver. That's why I don't need 2, just if anyone was wondering why. Actually, I think they made this Passive Radiator for the paper version of this driver that has the same X max and displacement. Before mixing your resin, it's a good idea to cut all the pieces. Here I'm cutting pieces that are sized for the surface that I am working on. I cut so many pieces that I have 3 or 4 layers worth of pieces. That's about the amount I can lay in half an hour or so. So about 3 or 4 layers of fiberglass. All the fiberglass should be overlapping each other. You can't brush resin on fiberglass, you have to dab it on. Afterwards you can use a roller like this to remove all of the air on the surface. The middle section here sounded a bit more hollow than the rest, so I decided to put a little brace in here before laying the next 4 layers of fiberglass. When it comes to speaker terminals, there's a lot of different religions. I like to believe that the terminals should be around the same mass as the speaker wire. But what do I know? I think these are gonna look real slick, so I'm pretty excited about them. This is a product for coating the underside of your car, but it has great sound deadening properties, so that's why I'm using it here. Other people sometimes use these Bitume pads too in their speaker builds. If you have ever tried to paint MDF, you will know that it can look amazing, but after like a week or so you'll see all the places where the MDF meets up against each other. it just has these properties that it sinks over time or something like that. So you have to seal it with something like a veneer, or in this case fiberglass. Here I'm starting to grind the surface to prep it for the bondo. I start with an 80 grit and then 120. You should never jump more than 100 grit at a time. If you put bondo directly into the scratch marks from an 80 grit paper, you will over time see the bondo start sinking, and then you will see the scratch marks. So that's why you have to get it up to around 120 or so. When you're done sanding your bondo, you should go over it with a 240. So you will have 80, 120 and then 240, and then you should be set to give it a high build primer that will remove the rest before you paint it. Now the same goes when you sand high build primer. You can only jump 100 grit at a time. In most cases you can just start with a 500 and then be done with it. And then it's finally time for the top coat. Here I'm giving first a kind of a thin layer, and then the second time it will be a full coat to make that glossy shine. When spraying, always keep the same distance to the surface and remember to overspray by 50%. And then you get a reward, this shiny beautiful speaker cabinet. When I purchased these drivers, I was going to build the Bromo kit from SB Acoustics. But I ended up buying a speaker kit by Troel Carlsen over Jensen Audio that's made for the aluminium version of this driver. And there's a little disclaimer here, this crossover was not made for the baffle that is on this design, so it probably doesn't sound as correct as it could do. It is timed aligned though, so there's that. And the Bromo kit comes with the same crossover for the aluminium version and the ceramic one. Usually a crossover consists of caps and coils and resistors. Here I'm putting the coil standing up so it doesn't have any crosstalk to the other bigger coil. None of the crossover components are directional. They just have to be put the right place in the signal path. Here's the roofer's side of the crossover. And this is the ingoing plus and minus, and this is the tweeter. Speaker channels going in. Here I'm making a little white dot on the speaker to show which one is the plus terminal. In comes some more damping material here, and then it's time for soldering the connections. I don't like to solder directly onto a tweeter because of the very small wiring inside of the tweeter, so I like to use connections here. And then I'll solder them directly onto the roofer's connections. I'm going to talk a little bit about the sound that these speakers produce now. Now the tweeter, it is very extended and very detailed. This also comes with a little price because you will hear everything on bad records too. Now the woofer is the best producing 6.5 inch I have ever heard, and maybe it's because of the Passive Radiator too, but it's really tight and really good bass, and it goes quite loud too. Now the mid-range, it is really good, but I have heard better. I think my reference speakers, when I AB them, I think they sound better than these do. But they also have dedicated mid-range, so it's not really fair because these drivers have to produce bass at the same time. And then they are assembled. I made a little sound demo. I couldn't find any Roku tracks that I liked that was royalty free, so this has to do.
Thank you so much for watching. It means the world to me. I hope you get inspired for your next speaker build. I am thrilled about how these sound, to my ear at least. Until next time, comment, like, subscribe. See you next time on Must Build Something.